You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Hey folks, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Dr. Richard Harden. We are on the same mission, which is waking up America. We just have different paths. So stay tuned for some information on how you can keep up with Richard and all his work.
Visit Richard's website at rahardin.com. That's the World Wide Web at rahardin.com. At his website, you can see a summary of the 6 books he has written, where purchases may be made. He also has a link to 18 videos on YouTube and several blogs about Christian beliefs. If you prefer, visit Amazon.com/Kindle and type in Richard Harden to see and purchase his books.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, fellow patriots. Welcome, fellow deplorables. Welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader, coming to you live from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM, 24/7. Yes, indeed, we are everywhere. We are everywhere. And joining me today as my co-host is the CEO and President of Frontiers of Freedom, the Patriot of the Commonwealth of Virginia, George Landreth. George, welcome to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
It is always great to be with you, Rick.
Great to have you with us, George. So, George, week after week we get together and we bemuse the fact that there's never anything to talk about. Never anything to talk about.
It is frustrating. I mean, it's like the news cycle doesn't want us to be successful. It really is.
It is. It is indeed.
It's just, but fortunately, we always come up with something, you know. But
somehow we find a way.
I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia, and so I thought it was interesting in the news. The University of Virginia is in Charlottesville, Virginia. It was founded by President Thomas Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
He, of course, is the drafter of the Declaration of Independence. And on his tombstone, of course, he says he wanted to be remembered as also having drafted Virginia's Statute on Religious Liberty, and as the founder and president of the University of Virginia. He did not list President of the United States there. He was asked why he didn't want that on his tombstone, and he explained that it was because that was an honor bestowed upon him by the American public, but was not, in fact, something that he was not an accomplishment of his.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, so the UVA president, Teresa Sullivan, sent an email out that talked about Thomas Jefferson and something he had said. And apparently the students were upset, and they found that offensive. Not the quote itself, but the fact that she would be quoting Thomas Jefferson.
Now, George, I don't understand this. Here you have Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, the third president of the United States, the author of our Declaration of Independence, the founder of the University of Virginia. And yet the kids that go to the University of Virginia are offended by that. You know, George, indeed the world is turned upside down.
Yeah, I think if it offends you when the university president quotes the founder of the university you're going to, maybe you picked the wrong school to go to. Instead of complaining to the president of the university, maybe what you should do is withdraw from the school and go to a different one. I don't know. Pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I was just kind of dumbfounded when I read the story. Fortunately, the president basically said, "You got to be kidding me," and so this is what her response was. I think I probably would have said more like, "Why don't you go to a different school, you idiot?" But at any rate, she was more diplomatic. Said, "Quoting Jefferson or any historical figure does not imply an endorsement of all the social structures and beliefs of his time. Jefferson's most influential and most quoted words were, 'All men were created equal.' These words were inherently contradictory in the era of slavery, but because of their power, they became the fundamental expression of a more genuine quality today." Of course, I agree with that. That's true. It strikes me as she's trying very hard to, not commit any microaggressions. I would have been likely just to say, grow up. If you don't like me quoting Thomas Jefferson or any other historical figure, then you go someplace where these people aren't talked about. But, here at the University of Virginia, with him as our founder, and, Monticello, his home, within a stone's throw of the campus and so the grounds there at university, and so forth, statues of him, etc., you're going to have to get a little tougher stomach than that cupcake. That's probably what I would have said, but,
George, I would like to know how many or what percentage of the campus students felt that way. Because I got to think the majority of the students on the campus do not feel that way. It's probably just a small vocal minority.
Right. Well, the news stories just say it was a group of professors and students.
Group could be 2 people. Group could be 3 people.
That could have been, 2 professors and 1 student, or 2 professors and 2 students. Who knows? I don't know. A group does not imply that it's a very large group. I think you're right. I suspect that most of the students see this as silly. At least I would hope so. But
and we're seeing this, George, we're seeing this in America today. We're seeing these racist groups like Black Lives Matter out there with these other lane-brained liberals demonstrating on our streets, stopping traffic, beating up people, breaking windows, looting and robbing. That doesn't represent all America, but what they want you to think they do. They want you to think that they represent all of America. They don't. They just represent a small group of idiots that are out in the streets. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, and I totally agree. And the other thing that they want to do is they want to equate you disagreeing with them as some sort of sign that you're morally, you're somehow morally bankrupt. In other words,
and somehow they're supposed to be morally superior. For what? For what? Right.
So agreeing with them becomes a requirement in order to be considered, quote, a good progressive person in modern culture. In other words, if you're not offended by someone quoting Thomas Jefferson, then you're obviously not as good a person as they are. What a crock. I mean, these people are moral, intellectual, all sorts, and they're pygmies, which is to malign pygmies, quite frankly. These are moral and intellectual pygmies.
Wow. You know what we're going to do, George, in honor of these people? I think what we're going to do, at least once a week when we get together, we're going to quote some Thomas Jefferson. That's what we're going to do, George.
We should do that. I think that's not a bad idea.
Quotations of Thomas Jefferson, and maybe some.
Absolutely.
Well, our audience out there.
I'll give you one that he said that is absolutely, completely. It's so much truer today than it was when he said it. And he said, "I don't read the paper." And he said, "The man who does not read the paper is more well-educated than the man who does," referring to the fact that it was filled with nothing but lies.
And that's even more so today probably than in the day of Jefferson.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But anyhow, so it's just interesting to me. Now, you look around on colleges in general, and you can see how schools across the country in the wake of the election canceled midterm exams, and professors were expressing sympathy to, quote, traumatized, unquote, students. And schools set up their typical safe spaces for students that were traumatized by the election results. And again, all I have to say to that is, if that traumatizes you, I mean, I felt really lousy after Barack Obama's reelection.
I felt horrible. I didn't want to watch the news. I didn't want to.
I was traumatized by it. And the fact is, I didn't expect for my, to have people set up safe spaces for me, or to cancel exams, or if I had work due that had to be turned in on some project for, something we were doing at Frontiers, I didn't feel that I needed extensions or it needed to be. Talk about a bunch of wimpy cupcakes. I am embarrassed for these people. This is why the progressive left is going to lose. It's because they're cupcakes. They are complete and total pansies. And I just can't believe it. I mean, talk about being wimpy. How could they possibly ever hope to lead a movement to take over the United States? They are just pathetic. It's amazing to me. So I don't know if you saw the University of Michigan Law School. The University of Michigan is considered a good law school. Announced a post-election self-care event. And they had food, and they also they had Play-Doh and coloring sheets.
Oh my God!
And
Play-Doh.
Bubbles.
Whoa! You said Play-Doh and coloring sheets, and this is the University of Michigan
Lego.
Law School.
And bubbles for law students.
Oh my
kind of like
God!
Take it easy and decompress.
Did you hear that bang, George?
What?
Did you just hear that loud bang? That loud bang was me doing something that I threaten to do quite often when I hear lunacy, and that is bang my head on the microphone. That's what I just did, George. Okay. Hey, George, break time. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth, CEO and President of Frontiers of Freedom. I am Rick Trader, your fellow deplorable, and we're coming to you live from the studio of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Today's show, like all our shows, is brought to you by the First Amendment, protected by the Second. Don't go away, George, and I will be right back.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote in mass to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
And yes, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for a rebroadcast or a podcast, whatever you want to call them, of our show, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at noontime, log on to roarradio.net, or at 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show and all the shows that are part of the Conservative Network here at WNJC 1360 from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199, 832-999-1199. You don't need a radio, computer. You just need a telephone and this telephone number, 832-999-1199. George, you know, this is all the soccer mom generation, the participation trophy generation, that, oh, my kid, don't let my kid fail at anything. Oh, because it might hurt their little feelings if they fail. You know, George, I've learned more from failing in life than I have from succeeding. Failure always, always, always teaches you more lessons than any other tool in your life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I prefer winning to
I do too.
But having said that, I think I learned more from losing than winning. I think it was Bill Gates who said, winning is a lousy teacher. Again, he's not advocating losing more, but when we lose, we ought to pay attention to it and figure out why, as opposed to moping about it. And that seems like that's the left wants to do. I know we were talking before the break about some of the crazy stuff that they were doing at Michigan, but it's not just there. Stanford, they had psychological counseling offered to students. At the University of Pennsylvania, they create a post-election safe space with puppies and coloring books. At Cornell... You know,
so these parents... You know, George, this frustrates me. Okay, because you're talking University of Pennsylvania, which is just across the river from where we're at, okay?
Right.
University of Pennsylvania. So their parents are spending upwards of $60,000 a year to send their kids to the school to do finger painting?
Apparently, and to play with puppies.
My God.
Pretty amazing stuff. Well, it doesn't stop there. Cornell, they held a cry-in at Cornell. A cry-in.
Yeah, hearing this makes me want to cry. Cry for the future of our country. If these are the idiots who are going to be the leaders of our country, right, we don't have much of a future.
Well, I agree. That's why these people will not be the leaders of our country. These people will be sitting somewhere sucking on a pacifier in a room, holding on to a blanket. Like Yale. At Yale, they held a group scream.
I want to scream.
I don't know, what are some of the more conservative colleges in the United States?
Conservative, Hillsdale. There you go, that's it.
Okay, so Hillsdale. Let's go back and search on Google and find out. Did they hold group screams and cry-ins and coloring book events?
Well, you know what, John, I'm going to ask, George, George, hold on for a minute. I'm going to ask John Forsyth Jr. to do a favor for me. John, if you will, Google Hillsdale College. And we're going to call them, George. We're going to call them and ask them, where could we go for the puppy love session? All right?
basically, I want to know, like, after the 2012 election.
Yeah, call them up, John. Call them up.
You know, I went to an undergraduate school that's pretty conservative as well. There's,
right.
You know, at BYU, there's also Liberty down in
Liberty in Virginia. Uh-huh.
I can guarantee you that Hillsdale, BYU, and Liberty, none of them had cry-ins. Provided puppies, psychological counseling, or coloring books and Play-Doh to students who were disappointed by the election.
Yeah, George, hold on. Is this Hillsdale College? My name is Rick Trader from WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia. And we're reporting on these colleges like at University of Michigan and University of Pennsylvania and places like that are having cry-ins and scream-ins and puppy love. Is Hillsdale doing any of that? Okay, you're not... Can I put, by the way, we're not going to use your name, but can we put your voice on the air? Okay. Media relations, okay. Is there any way you could transfer this call? Because we're live on the air right now on WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia.
You might tell her that we're pretty sure that Hillsdale College is not engaging in this craziness, but whether...
Hold on, George. Hold on, George. I'm sorry, what was that, ma'am? Okay, you're just the operator. You can't speak for the college. Could you redirect this phone call to someone who can? Okay. Hey, George, as we speak, the young lady we were talking to was not able to speak for the college, but she's going to try to transfer me to somebody who is. So in
fairness, I can understand that. If she's been hired to answer phones, she doesn't want to be,
right.
Become the spokesperson,
Sure.
I understand that.
Sure. So,
well, while we wait on her, do you want to go to the riots in Portland, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York?
I don't want to go, but we could talk about them.
Let's talk about it for a minute while we see and then we'll break. As soon as you've got someone from Hillsdale that can answer the question, we will suspend conversation about riots. But,
okay.
So you have people who purportedly voted for Clinton, or maybe people didn't vote at all, I don't know, but they clearly weren't people who voted for Trump.
Right.
Rioting in cities that Clinton won. Mm-hmm. Chicago, a man was dragged from his car and beaten by a violent mob in broad daylight because the rioters believed that he voted for Trump. I don't know on what basis they made that conclusion. Maybe it was a bumper sticker. I don't know. But they pulled him from his car and beat him. That's how you get revenge on friends who live in the city. You put somebody that lives in the city you want to get revenge on. You want them beat them up. You put a Trump bumper sticker on their car, unbeknownst to them. Yeah, right.
Let them drive around Philadelphia or Detroit or whatever. They'll get.
Yeah, a Connecticut man that was waving an American flag and a Trump sign was beaten up by a group of men. Again, this was in Connecticut. In Boston, a man was jumped and had his nose and eye socket broken as he told the man he supported Trump.
Wow.
This is the progressives. This is the people that tell us that they care about people, that they're concerned about the little guy, that they just want government to make things more fair. Unless, of course, you vote for somebody they don't like, in which case they're going to beat the living snot out of you. Not one-on-one, because, of course, they're all cupcakes and can't do that.
Boy, those, and what do they call them? They're the caring people, and we're the racists, we're the bigots, we're the homophobes, we're the degenerates, we're the Islamophobes. Okay.
Now, this is my question, is how many people in 2012, mm-hmm. when Romney lost, how many Romney supporters, for example, in the state of Utah or Idaho, or other states that he won easily, pulled Obama supporters from the car and beat them up?
Yeah, no, George, I must have been sleeping because I didn't hear of a single incident.
Yeah,
like
I didn't hear about that either. I have a feeling if that had happened, we would have heard about it too.
I almost guarantee it. Hey, you know what, George? We're waiting for somebody from Hillsdale College to join us. While we're doing that, let's take our next break, all right?
Sounds good.
George, Mr. John Forsythe Jr. is busy with that phone call, so I'll get us started here. But, Ron? Hold on there, George. All right.
Okay, yeah, we'll take that one.
Yeah, George, we're getting a number from them because apparently they called the media department. They said they could not speak for the college. So anyway, we'll attempt to get that.
Okay.
So in the meantime, we'll go to break, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landers and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, the Conservative Commandos radio show, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. Don't go away. George and I will be right back. This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote in mass to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired as I am about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios. WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth, CEO and President of Frontiers of Freedom. I'm the deplorable one, Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear rebroadcast of our shows, check out our websites, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at 11 p.m. log on to highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day from your telephone by calling 832-999-1199. George, I spoke with an Emily Davis at Hillsdale College, and she couldn't come on the phone right now. She said she'd be happy to set up an interview for the future that we could discuss this, but she has assured me that there wasn't any of that craziness happening at Hillsdale College.
I am shocked because I fully expected there to be puppies and Legos and Play-Doh and bubbles everywhere. But no, they're in class, studying, taking exams, doing homework.
Hey, George.
I cannot believe it. They're so insensitive there.
George,
Barry Arnn, of course, who was the president of Hillsdale, just sounds like a monster of a man.
Yeah. George, Ronald Reagan, during his time as governor and then as president, as governor of California one time, he shut down, I think it was the University of California at Berkeley, because the students had taken over the administration building. You remember that?
Yep.
And then as president, he fired all the air traffic controllers because they went out on strike against a court order. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Well, maybe President Donald Trump will do something very similar. Maybe he'll go a step further and fire, these universities get massive federal aid. Massive federal aid. Maybe he could say, all right, you act like that, we're just going to cut off your federal aid. And let's see how your school functions. Or maybe he should fire all these administrators. Maybe he should do something like that. I mean, because it's getting crazy. Where's our money going?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that'll be interesting to see is over time, the universities suffer as a result of this. We've seen the NFL, for example, its ratings are going down. That's its source of revenue, is ratings and ad revenue that's driven by ratings. And I think we all know why that's been happening. And so the question is, will these crazy liberal universities, filled with these pointy-headed, pencil-necked geek professors and administrators, these cupcakes, these pansies of human beings, will they do the same thing to universities? Will people basically start, fleeing these universities and start going to more respectable places of learning?
Yeah.
Where, and I would hope so. I mean, I hope the marketplace solves this problem. I realize it won't do it overnight.
Yeah.
Because if you're already at a university and you're close to graduation, you just kind of have to stick it out and finish up there. But over time, will we see schools, their enrollment drop? Will we see certain schools begin to fail?
Well, if I was a parent, if I was
probably want to have aid programs to help them.
George, if I was a parent and my kid wanted to go to college, believe me, there'd be certain colleges or universities, hey, they could go, but they're not getting any of my money to get through it. But you know, George, when you talk about the NFL, the ratings being down, I think it's because of a couple of things. Number one, these idiot athletes who think they're better than the country, who refuse to stand during the national anthem. That is one reason. And the other reason is they have the Washington Redskins on too often.
Now, let's not take a shot unnecessarily.
Well, I'm taking a shot, George.
At the Redskins.
At your favorite team.
I was with you till you went to there. I was 100% with you. Well, this is the other thing, too. Like, the left now, you know, we get the renewed calls for the abolishment of the Electoral College. And I think it's important that conservatives understand the Electoral College is important. It's not important simply because it helps essentially stop liberals from winning, but it's actually important. The Founding Fathers did it on purpose. It wasn't some mistake. Everyone seems to think that in government, the idea of the will of the people is the most important thing.
Right.
It is kind of, but let me tell you something. The will of the people, where you could argue that lots of people, like Adolf Hitler, had the will of the people. And that wasn't legitimate. It wasn't legitimate because it didn't recognize the rights and fundamental freedoms of people. So my point is, if we had a vote tomorrow and said, hey, we're going to round up certain groups of people, maybe people who live on certain streets, or people who go to certain churches, or people with certain last names, and let's say most of us voted for that and said we're going to round them up and put them in camps of some sort, that wouldn't be legitimate, even though the majority of people said it was okay. So I think, one, we have to back off the idea that every time the majority wants something, it should get what it wants. Secondly, they did this on purpose. There was a very good reason for it, and that was they didn't want the ability of just some sort of, like back then, it would have been the majority of the people living in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and Williamsburg.
Right.
Perhaps Charleston. They didn't want those people to force the rest of the country to do whatever they wanted to do. They actually wanted it to be... They wanted to force anybody running for president to build a coalition that would cross state lines and wouldn't just be based on one simple demographic, like, do I live in an urban center or do I live out in the country? And today you have that same issue, which is if you could win by the popular vote alone, the Democrats could always win because they could, through voter fraud, turn up the vote in all the cities they don't currently do that in. Like, there's not a lot of voter fraud, to my knowledge, in California, and the reason is because it doesn't pay to. We knew last May who was going to win California, and so did they. So they didn't invest a lot of resources in getting buses to get people to vote for dead people or people who moved away, because they're going to win it anyhow. But I guarantee you, if we told them tomorrow the rules were different and you could win the election by just getting more votes, then they would be running the vote not just in places like Philadelphia because it was a close state, or places like Virginia because it's a close state, but in every city that they have some ability to. And we would end up, so, I mean, the Electoral College is important because it contains and limits the impact of voter fraud. You only have voter fraud in states that are close. That's why you have it up in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County.
Yep.
Ohio's usually close. You have it in Florida and so forth. It's because that's how they hope to win the election. But anyhow, the other thing is it helps force candidates to appeal to Americans all across the nation. So they actually are the president of the United States of America as opposed to the president of some small, sliver of America that just happens to have a lot of people in it.
Well, George, I was against the Electoral College and for a direct vote, but that was in the days before I understood or began to understand that we are not a democracy. We are a republic. That's number one. Number two, if we did go by the popular vote, only the urban areas would be able to elect our leaders. When you look at a map of the United States that's colored in blue and red, blue in the areas that voted for Democrat control, right in the areas that voted for Republican control. Just about the entire map is red, except for isolated splotches of blue right around the major urban areas. Now, should it be the urban areas totally control America and the direction of our country? No, I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. If I was to make any change to the Electoral College, instead of states winner take all, like California winner take all, I'm sure there are congressional districts in California where the majority of those people in those congressional districts voted for Donald Trump. So maybe we could break it down. The electoral vote is based upon the congressional districts.
Right. Well, like in Virginia, Donald Trump would have won most of our electoral college votes.
Well, there you go. At least this way,
he probably lost 2 districts.
This way, people who live in areas like California or New York or New Jersey, their votes won't be outweighed by the liberal idiots that live in places like, Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Newark, New Jersey and New York City. At least their votes will count for something. Their votes,
right.
For instance, New Jersey. Okay, New Jersey went for Hillary Clinton. But there are about 4 or 5 different congressional districts where the vote actually went for Donald Trump. However, because of the big urban areas like Newark and Camden and whatever, our votes were outweighed. Our votes never had a chance of counting. Okay?
Right. Well, and one of the things that you make a good point about is because we're a republic, as opposed to just a straight democracy, that's why we, for example, don't actually vote on legislation ourselves. We elect representatives to go to Washington and do that, and they vote for legislation and so forth. But if you think about this, it'd be like in football. We all know how football games are scored. If you get a touchdown, you get 7 points, or 6 and then an extra point, or
right.
2. And if field goals 3 and a safety's 2, right? And we all know that's the game is played. At the end of the game, the team with the most points wins. But it'd be like someone saying, that's not fair. They should go by who got the most first downs, or who had the most time of possession, or who got the most yards. And then at the end of the thing, arguing that the game is skewed and it's unfair. That's what they're doing. It has always been this way. There's a good reason for it. It's not insane. It's not designed to rob anybody. It's designed to create a presidency where the person has to build a coalition across state lines, across a majority of states in America to accumulate 270 electoral votes.
Hey, George, sorry to do this, but we're a bit beyond the break.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network at WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. We have a couple really great guests lined up for you today, and on the other side of the break, George and I will let you know who they are. Be right back.
They say I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote in mass to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and yours truly, Rick Trader. And for rebroadcasts of this wonderful program, check out our website, ccrshow.com or ccrsnetwork.com, or at 11 p.m., log on to highplainsdailynews.com, or you can hear our show any time of the day from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. George, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know you wanted to talk some more about the electoral college.
We do have to pay the bills.
Yeah, okay.
My point on the electoral college is really this. Imagine what this election would be like if Hillary did not need to win anything other than urban centers. Because if you get rid of the electoral college, then that changes her strategy as well. She knows that she just needs to get turn out the voters in places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, perhaps Phoenix. I'm not sure about that, but down in Austin, Texas, and Chicago, across in Detroit and
placate to the urban areas.
York.
Yeah,
pardon me.
Just placate to the urban areas.
Yeah, Miami, etc. And so she could promote policies designed solely to their benefit, and it could get as crass as, if you vote for me, I will take money from everyone else and give it to you. And that's how it could go. And that might work, because that's the sort of system you'd then have. You'd have this system where where democracy be reduced to basically three wolves determining what will be for dinner when there's two sheep. And so the three wolves outvote the two sheep, and boom, that's what you got. And if that's what you think is fairer, if that's democracy to you, if you think the world's a better place when the three sheep the three wolves get to outvote the two sheep as to what's for dinner, then you're probably in the wrong country and you have the wrong founders, because our founders were worried about that, and that's what they didn't want, and so they gave us the electoral college. It's a good thing, not a bad thing, and I hope all of our conservative friends understand that. And I would say that even if we were frustrated because we lost the electoral college, and we have, I wasn't upset with the electoral college in the last several elections. It's just the reality of things. We need to, our founders were wise people. They understood the dangers of letting three wolves outvote two sheep for what's for dinner, and so they created a system that made it harder to do that. At any rate, that's what I want to conclude with, so our folks understood why the electoral college is actually a good idea.
Okay.
But we have some good guests. You mentioned
we do,
and at 4:05 we're going to have Liz Harrington. She's a writer over at the Washington Free Beacon, and if that's not on your favorites list, it should be. It's a great source for news. She is a graduate from Temple University, and she previously worked for CNSnews.com, and of course, like I said, she's now at the Free Beacon, and she's written an interesting article. She apparently got some intelligence about the dark money group I think Soros-funded Democracy Alliance, interestingly named. They talked about how November 8th was a hard day. They needed some rest and recovery time and so forth. They probably just should have gone over to University of Pennsylvania or Michigan or whatever, and could have played Play-Doh with the rest of them. But at any rate, she even talked about how the hard left responded to this election and kind of what some of their frustrations were. I think it should be an interesting conversation.
I agree.
And then at 4:35, we've got John Zmirak, and he is a senior editor of The Stream, and he's also the author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Catholicism. He's been a press secretary for Louisiana Governor Mike Foster. He has also been an editor and reporter at Success Magazine and Investors Business Daily. His works have appeared in the Weekly Standard, Atlanta Journal and Constitution, USA Today, Front Page Magazine, American Conservative, you name it, he's probably been there. At any rate, and he's going to give us some insights on Steve Bannon. A lot of people, he's been in the news a lot. He's being attacked viciously. He's supposedly, now the left is attacking him as a bigot, and, he's everything from anti-Semitic to disliking other minority groups. That's if you believe the extreme left. And he's going to give us a more accurate view and do some research. I don't know Steve that well. I know him by reputation, but I know Kellyanne personally. If someone told me Kellyanne's all these things, I could say I've known her for basically 30 years. That's not who she is. You're lying. I don't know as much about Steve, so it'd be great to have John with us to give us an insight there. But I have some close friends who know Steve quite well, and they assure me that this is all a bunch of just a complete load of hooey. They're just vicious attacks that Steve is, for example, very pro-Israel. It's kind of hard to be anti-Semitic and pro-Israel, but that's what they claim. At any rate, so I think that'll also be a very enlightening and worthwhile conversation.
All right, a couple of great guests.
Yep.
So, George, let's talk for a minute about the Trump legacy.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that that Trump becomes Obama's legacy. And what I mean by that is Obama is, he made Trump possible. I mean, think about it. Make America great again. Mm-hmm. What is that campaign about? It's about fixing all the things that this president has done to make America less great, to diminish it. He made trade deals, for example, that put America second. He made international decisions and foreign policy decisions and national security decisions, always putting America second. He, sometimes third and fourth, but never first. And so Mr. Trump made his entire campaign as a response to what we've seen and what's revulsed most of America for the last 8 years. And so I would argue, if someone said, what is Obama's legacy? Well, certainly it's all kinds of things. It's a stagnant economy. Well, again, a stagnant economy was if you will, a foundational element to part of Trump's campaign, because he talked about getting it going again. And let's put it this way. Had Obama been a better president, it's very doubtful that Trump could have won, because success breeds success. And when you're successful, you tend to, Ronald Reagan, for example, was successful. And he was able to, by landslide proportions, get his vice president elected on the assumption he was going to be in the third term for Ronald Reagan. This president could not do that for Hillary. There's a reason. He wasn't successful. People didn't want to continue this. And you also had a candidate who promised to change things, to get things back on track. And so I would argue that the truth of the matter is Barack Obama doesn't have a legacy except for the election of Donald Trump. And I say that somewhat to tweak Mr. Obama. But I think it's also true. The reality is almost everything this president did was done by executive order, except for perhaps Obamacare. Mm-hmm. And it was rammed down America's throat sideways. None of it was done on a bipartisan basis. And it will all be undone in the very early stages of the Trump presidency. So that's another reason I would say Trump will be Obama's legacy, because Obama's legacy is going to be obliterated. He will not have one. he will be the zero president, which is good that his last name begins with O. He'll be the big zero president because he will have spent 8 years in the White House and basically done nothing other than drive America to the ground, and he'll have no lasting legacy. It will all be undone.
Well, George, I think you're right when you talk about, okay, Obama was elected on hope and change, and Trump was elected on let's make America great again. Well, I guess that hope and change and all the hope that people put in the change, they didn't like the change too much once they got it. So therefore...
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think what happened was people realized that, they obviously realized that the hope and change they were hoping for and the hope and change that Mr. Obama was talking about were two very different things.
Indeed, indeed. Well, George, we're up against a break one more time, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, coming to you from the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio network, right here at WNGC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and several others. Don't go away. On the other side, George and I are going to be speaking with Liz Harrington about her article, Democracy Alliance members had to recover after the election. We'll be right back. This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote en masse to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired as I am about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet, we're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. Businessman there, drink my wine. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Greetings, fellow deplorables. This is George Landreth with your fellow deplorable, Rick Trader. We, of course, are the deplorable Conservative Commandos, and we're glad to be back with you. We've got our guest, but before we go to our guest, I just remind you all that if you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, you can check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. At noon, you can always log on to roarradio.net. At 11 p.m., you can log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And with the phone and this number, you can always listen to Conservative Commandos, 832-999-1199. We've tried to make it really difficult for you to not be able to listen in. We want you to be here every day, listening to Conservative Commandos, so you have all these different ways to hear us. So we hope you're here all the time. Alrighty, we have Elizabeth Harrington. She is a staff writer for the Washington Free Beacon. And I've told you many times, this should be one of your favorites. You should be going to the Free Beacon every single day. It's simple to find. It's freebeacon.com. Anyhow, she is a graduate of the Temple University. She graduated in 2010. Before she joined the Free Beacon, she also was a journal and writer at the CNS news.com site. So she has good experience in writing. She's written an interesting article about the hard left, the extreme left's tremendous disappointment after the election. And so I want us all to, send out kind thoughts and our deepest sympathies for George Soros and all of his leftist kook friends who were depressed after the election. Elizabeth, how are you doing? Welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. We're certainly glad to have you here, and you've written a very interesting article. How did you come across this information? You've got a lot of quotes and emails and so forth. I mean, how did you find out what their kind of inner conversations were? That's just kind of interesting to me.
So their Democracy Alliance, which is this group of a dark money liberal group, they're very, very secretive, and they were holding a post-election conference, and nobody knew when it was going to happen until the day it started, and it was held at the Mandarin Oriental, the swanky hotel in D.C., from Sunday to Tuesday. And so once we found out, where it was going to be, a colleague and I went over there just to see, if you could find anything, talk to people, find out any information. And they're a very secretive group, so it's very hard to, get any information out of them. And so, that's in part because reporters like my colleague Lachlan Marquet has been able to successfully get a hold of their internal documents before from these events. And so they're very under lock and key. I was able to find this particular email that was left behind in one of the ballrooms where they had some of the events at the hotel. That was the only thing I could find. There was nothing else because they are they have security down there. They are very, they keep everything very close to the chest. So, but I was able to get this email, and I thought it had an interesting insight into some of these donors thinking after they were really shocked that Hillary Clinton lost the election. And actually they had to change their most of the agenda of this conference because they were about to talk about how, Hillary Clinton won the White House, and she didn't. So what this email says is the people that were organizing a panel on the young vote, the day after the election, Ann Johnson, she works for a group called Grassroots Solutions, one of these that's very, works with a lot of labor unions and liberal groups, and she just says, it's a hard day for sure, but, oh man, we've, the incredible work we've done over the past year to get the youth vote out, and she says, I hope folks get some time to rest and recover in the coming days. So you got a little bit of insight in there that they were pretty upset about the results of the election. And also, it's interesting to me that they were actually proud of the youth vote when I guess some of the returns hadn't come in completely yet, but Hillary Clinton did not perform as well as Barack Obama did.
Right. Well, earlier you weren't on the show at the time, but we were talking about some of the universities have had cry-ins, and they've had segments where they had bubbles and puppies and Legos and Play-Doh and coloring books for students to drown their sorrows after the election. Was there any evidence in the ballroom that there were, coloring books or bubbles or Play-Doh?
All I read, no, I don't think it was that pathetic. But, because we did hear some EPA employees were crying at their desk, too. I heard that story floating around. But, no, I mean, the glimpse I saw, it was funny. They had this poster up, progressive party for the future, or to the future, and I think that had already been printed before the results had come in on November 8th. But yes, from what I saw, it wasn't, people weren't too somber, but they also weren't, very happy.
So it went from party to quasi-wake?
Right. Yeah, I mean, most people were, generally very nice and just, normal, but then once they knew I was a reporter for the Free Beacon, they wouldn't say anything at all. But, now, it wasn't that somber as you would really expect. But one other interesting thing from this email is that, they say that they actually spent an unprecedented amount of money on getting young people to the polls. And it really backfired for them because she did not get the support that Barack Obama did, in large part because she was a very weak candidate, inauthentic, and, a lot of these young people believed in Bernie Sanders because at least he actually had a consistent message he was running on, and, never really got on board with Hillary Clinton, and a lot of them voted third party or didn't vote at all. So pouring all that money into the youth vote really didn't work out for them.
Failed effort. Well, I hope in the future they spend their money poorly again and again. That's always, great. When the left wastes millions of dollars to blow elections. I like that.
Yeah.
I heard somewhere, and I don't have all the details, but I understand there's an Iowa bill that's called the Suck It Up Buttercup Bill, and it's all this student coddling that's going on probably state campuses. But have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I heard. I think a Republican in the state Congress has sponsored this bill that would prohibit any funding to go to these kind of post-election counseling services, whether it's crying rooms for students on campus and using basically public resources for these crybabies. I mean, honestly, they're being so coddled just because they've never been presented with an alternate viewpoint in their life. And I mean, good for I don't know this congressman's name, this state legislator, but good for him. Yeah, it's called Suck It Up Buttercups, and he wants to prevent all the public universities in the state from wasting not only the money, but the time that these students are supposed to be getting an education. Maybe they should have to read a book or something.
The idea, if one of my kids had come to me after the 2012 election, and we were obviously very disappointed at the Landers household, and I have some kids that are old enough to vote, and they had said, Dad, I just can't go to class today. I'm so disappointed. Or I can't go to work today. I would have looked at them, down and just said, really? You're kidding me, right? This is not how Landers behave. We don't roll over and play dead because we don't get our way. And I'm actually somewhat encouraged because to me, the good news here is this is the next generation of leadership for the left. So these people are mentally soft, intellectually weak, morally bankrupt. I think I earlier said they were intellectual and moral pygmies. I don't mean that as any cut towards pygmies. I realize that's just a genetic issue, but you get my idea. I mean, they're not raising the next generation of leaders. This is not somebody who's going to be giving a speech that asks people don't ask what you can do for what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country kind of speech.
Right.
This isn't the era of John F. Kennedy is long since over for these people, as I see it. But we are pretty much up against a break, and so I wanted to. I think the state rep's name is Bobby Kaufman, I'm told, but I didn't know that. But fortunately, I've got someone here who's willing to help out. But we've got a break, and so what I wanted to know is, can you stick around? Because I would like our listeners to continue to hear a little bit more what's going on here, and stick to the break. Is that okay?
Sure.
Excellent. We really appreciate it. We're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC 1360. That's our flagship station in Philadelphia. And, of course, if you're not listening to us on a radio, that means you're probably doing it on the Internet. And that means you might be listening to us on American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, and AM/FM 24/7. We will be right back. Don't go away.
I'm crazy. I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 13 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote in mass to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Greetings, fellow deplorables. This is George Landreth with Brick Trader. We, of course, are coming to you live, and we have a great guest. We are really glad you're with us. There's obviously lots of interesting things going on. I want to remind you that if you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com and CCRshow.com. And at noon, you can always log on to roarradio.net, and 11 p.m., highplainsdailynews.com. And with a phone and this number, you can always tune into the Conservative Commandos, 832-999-1199. So you never have an excuse for missing a show. But we are really glad to have with us Liz Harrington. She is a staff writer at the Washington Free Beacon, and if you want to bookmark them, you should. You should be checking them every day. They have lots of good stuff there. And as you can tell, they're not just reporting the normal stuff you see off the AP wire. Liz went out and did some real old-fashioned investigative reporting. She got news about a George Soros-backed group that was meeting in Washington. She found out when and where they were meeting, even though it wasn't publicly available. And then she hung out and tried to learn what she could. People didn't want to talk that much, but she still came away with a good story, giving us insights. That's the kind of reporting that the rest of the media ought to be doing, but Liz is doing it. And so, Liz, we really appreciate that, and of course, we're glad to have you at the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thank you.
You've got in your story, you talk about one of the issues that they talked about, the youth group, the youth vote, and how well they had done with that. But yet you point out, did they really seem to think they'd done well with it? Because you pointed out they really didn't do particularly well with the youth vote. They may have won it narrowly, but they didn't. Barack Obama had a pretty impressive youth vote turnout. And as I understand it, both the numbers were down and her percentage was down. So that means it was a pretty abysmal effort.
Yeah, right. I mean, Democrats are always, have an advantage with younger voters. It just always goes that way. But with this and with other demographics that everyone assumed that Trump would do poorly in, he actually did just as well as Mitt Romney, or if not better. But he polled about the same percentage with Hispanic voters. I think it was roughly around 37%. And with youth voters, he got around 30%. So, but the problem for Hillary Clinton is they really Democrats really depend on getting the turnout of these groups. And, I mean, I always thought from the beginning there's just no way that Hillary Clinton is going to get the same share of the African-American vote as Barack Obama did. And also the youth vote, I mean, she was not a very strong candidate. I mean, and that was evidence in the primary where she could not put away this 72-year-old socialist, Bernie Sanders. And it was because she did not have a message. She is an insider. She's been around forever. She has all of this baggage. Bernie Sanders, I mean, even though he's this 72 or 74-year-old guy, he inspired the young people because he was different and he had passion. And, you know, as conservatives in your audience probably disagree with, you know, pretty much everything Bernie Sanders stood for, everybody could still see that he actually, you know, had an independent streak and he actually had something conviction that he believed in. And so, and then with the way the DNC totally was in the tank for Hillary, I mean, it really was a rigged system for the Democrats and all those Bernie supporters that, you know, felt betrayed, and rightfully so. I mean, it was not a fair primary fight. I mean, on the other side, you had Reince Priebus that really let the voters decide and stayed out of it. The Democrats had Debbie Wasserman Schultz and then Donna Brazile, who were clearly just working for Hillary Clinton when we saw with all the hacked emails. So,
interesting, yeah.
I mean, there was no way she was going to get all those people to come out and vote for her. They were just going to stay home or write in Jill Stein or Gary Johnson, or, you know, in some cases even vote for Donald Trump. So it's funny that they put so much money into it, but you know what? When it really comes down to, as we've seen with this election, is candidates matter, and Trump was a better candidate than Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Candidates do matter. Message matters. Better together isn't much of the message. I mean, I'm not quite even what she's saying by that. But at any rate, I know that Rick has a question for you, and I don't want to monopolize the time we have with you, so I should invite Rick to jump in and ask his question.
Okay, here on the Conservative Commandos radio show, we are speaking with Elizabeth Harrington. She's a staff writer at the Washington Free Beacon. Elizabeth, great to have you on again with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
In your article, you talk about, and you and George have been talking about how Clinton failed to energize voters aged 18 to 34. Now, Liz, I've had the opportunity to meet you in person on a few occasions, like down at CPAC with an old friend. I don't know where he's at anymore, but Greg Wynn Williams. But so I can place you in that group of 18 to 34.
Right.
And I wanted to talk with you about your friends, your peers, the people that you know personally or have talked to who are also in that same group. Are they all the ones that may have voted for Hillary Clinton? Are they all like these extreme crybabies we see riding the streets of New York and Portland and San Francisco? I mean, what are their attitudes? We know about the
I don't think I could really be friends with someone that was doing that. I mean, I don't know if we get along very well.
Right, but
no,
I would...
It's an interesting question. I mean, I have friends in D.C. that are definitely part of the groupthink that thought that Hillary was easily going to win, and because D.C. is such a bubble, it's so isolated from the rest of the world and what real people are actually going through in the country. But I also have friends that, you know, are conservative. Of course, I work for a conservative publication, and we were on the same page. But it's interesting because I have other friends and people I know that are friends of family members who are, you know, younger. And that would, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I've heard it countless times. Even the most, you know, liberal young people who I would have assumed were going to go out to vote for Hillary, these people, you know, went out and voted for Trump. So there really is not, I mean, obviously the numbers skew Democrat. This was a unique election, but young people are not all the same, and they think differently. And if anybody was actually listening to what Hillary Clinton was talking about and what Trump was talking about, a lot of people just, they didn't want to admit it. There was a big stigma factor. But they liked Trump more. And, you know, it was surprising even, you know, for some people that I would have assumed were very, very liberal and would never vote for Trump, but I've heard other instances where they did. So definitely not a heterogeneous group, I would suppose.
Hey, Liz, the actions of this immature, childish group of just a few, do you think that this is just a fad, or are we going to have to put up with this for 4 years?
Honestly, well, there are some encouraging signs that some universities are just actually cracking down on this kind of thing. I mean, we've seen it growing with the safe spaces and all this nonsense. But there have been, just since the election, you've had some cases where people are sick of this kind of stuff. But, I mean, I don't know. I think the political correctness had a huge blow on November 8th. And, you know, maybe you see the backlash with the Grubhub CEO that wrote that letter saying that you have no business working here if you voted for Trump. I mean, there was a tremendous backlash to that, as there should be. I mean, you shouldn't be threatened to lose your job because of your viewpoint. And so I think there are some promising signs, but, I mean, it is very discouraging when you look at academia. It seems to only be getting worse, and you have these kids that are totally unprepared for the real world because they're being so coddled. And I think the more that teachers and academics stand up to this nonsense, the better off everybody will be, and then these college students will be.
Liz Harrington, it's always great to have you with us. Please tell our audience how they could follow your work.
Yeah, just check out freebeacon.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at freebeacon, and my Twitter handle is at LizWFD. And we post all our stories there, so that's a good way to check us out.
Hey, Liz, by the way, if you should see or talk to that Greg Wims, we have him give a call to a fat old bald man sometime. I miss hearing from him.
Okay, I will. I doubt it. I doubt I'll hear from him, but I will.
Take care. God bless.
All right, you too.
And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with George Landreth and Rick Trader, coming to you from WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, the studios of the Conservative Commandos radio show, and around the world on the internet with American Patriots Radio. Broadcast now, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, K98 Talk, iHeartRadio, AM, FM 24/7. On the other side, we're going to be talking with John Zemrick from The Stream about Steve Bannon. Is he a bigot? We'll find out right after this.
I really don't care. That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote en masse to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We're establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired, as I am, about the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on WNJC Radio 1360 a.m. or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioNetwork.com and CCRN.com for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where even more newsmakers go to be heard. From the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Greetings, fellow Americans. This is George Landreth with Rick Trader. We, of course, as you all are deplorables, and proudly so. And I want to remind you that if you would like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, that's sometimes referred to as a podcast, you can check it out at our website, at www.ccrsnetwork.com and ccrshow.com. At noon, you can log on to roarradio.net. And at 11 p.m., you can always log on to highplainsdailynews.com. And with this phone number and your phone, you can also listen to the Conservative Commandos, even if you don't have a radio and even if you don't have the Internet. 832-999-1199. We have our next guest, and this, I think, will be a very interesting segment. We have John Zmirak with us. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. But John is a senior editor of The Stream, and he is also the author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Catholicism. He's been a press secretary for Louisiana Governor Mike Foster. I would add that he was an overtly out-of-the-closet pro-life governor. He is also a reporter and editor at Success Magazine and at Investors Business Daily. He's been with a number of other publications as well, and his works have appeared in just about every publication you can imagine. Everything from First Things, the Weekly Standard, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, USA Today, Front Page Magazine, the American Conservative, the South Carolina Review, Modern Age, you name it, he has been published there. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, John.
Thanks. It's good to be honored.
You have written an interesting article. It's on Steve Bannon, and you talk about whether or not he's a bigot or not. That's the charge that we keep hearing over and over again, that he is some sort of bad guy. And my sense of this, I know Kellyanne Fitzpatrick really well and have for about 30 years. I don't know Steve, but I know people who know him quite well, and they tell me this is all a complete fabrication and just an attempt to frustrate and minimize the success in the election. What's your take on that?
I think it is a big lie, which if they repeat it often enough will seem like the truth. I think, remember, all the
people will believe them. I mean, like, little lies, they are always questioned or skeptical, but you give them the big lie, and they're like, oh, well, maybe that's true.
The point of this particular big lie is to negate the effect of the Donald Trump election. To say, we attacked Donald Trump as a bigot and a racist, and it didn't work. Well, now that he's president and there's nothing we can do about it, we on the left, and we never Trump, globalists, neocons, whoever was within the party was desperate to stop Donald Trump and would have preferred, in some cases, like Max Boot, the election of Hillary Clinton. Clearly, Bill Kristol would have preferred the election of Hillary Clinton. All the people
to me, that's crazy, though. You think about it. If you would prefer the election of Hillary Clinton, I understand people who had other candidates they liked more than Donald Trump, right? That's normal. That happens in every election cycle. But in the end,
I prefer Ted Cruz. I was for Ted Cruz right up until the end.
Donald Trump wasn't my first pick, but once he was the nominee, I was all in. Because, let's be honest, if you prefer Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump, you got to turn in your conservative card.
Well, here's the thing. These people are more concerned with the U.S. having an aggressive foreign policy that meddles in Middle Eastern countries, that will overthrow the government in Syria, even if it means risking war with Russia, in order to put in charge a bunch of Islamists paid for by Saudi Arabia linked to Al-Qaeda. That's their idea of an assertive American foreign policy. 1 million more Christian refugees kicked out at... Wait, please.
But not that kind.
Remember, the neocons gave us the Iraq War and 1 million Christian refugees. Now they want a war in Syria and another million Christian refugees as we overthrow another secular dictator and create chaos that'll be replaced by intolerant Islam. So these people
I want the kind of strong military and foreign policy that Ronald Reagan had.
Right. These people want to neutralize Steve Bannon and surround Trump with people like Reince Priebus, who are just Paul Ryan clones. So that even though Donald Trump's name is on the White House door, effectively it'll be like Jeb Bush is president. If Donald Trump throws Steve Bannon over the side, he might as well change his name to Jeb Bush and move to Kennebunkport.
Interesting. That's what my friends have told me who've known Steve a long time. They've said, he's been, some people say, I've heard people, I don't mean my friends, but mainstream news type people argue that he's an anti-Semite, which my friends laugh at and say that he is just unabashedly pro-Israel. So
pro-Israel, and he was very close, not just pro-Israel, he was close friends with Andrew Breitbart, which is how he ended up running Breitbart.com. Andrew Breitbart was, a very proud American Jew. And not just Israel, Breitbart is constantly running pieces about the threats to Jewish people posed by Islamists all across Europe and America. I would say Israel, but also Jewish people around the world have no better friend than Breitbart.com under the editorship of Steve Bannon, and they'll have no better friend in the White House than Steve Bannon. And there's no evidence that he's anti-black, that he's a racist in any way. And if you press these people for the evidence, they can't provide any except guilt by 3 degrees of association. I have an article up at the stream that quotes Melanie Phillips. Melanie Phillips is a fantastic, brave Jewish conservative living in London, constantly exposing the aggressive nature of Islam and attacks on Jews around the world. There is no more upstanding and vigorous defender of the rights of Jewish people than Melanie Phillips, and she called the attacks on Steve Bannon a disgusting smear. David Horowitz said the same thing. David Goldman of Asia Times said the same thing. This is nothing but a power play by neocons who couldn't nominate Jeb Bush. They couldn't get enough people to vote for Evan McMullen to throw the election to Hillary Clinton. Now they want to turn Donald Trump into Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio, and we can't let it happen.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I mean, this is how you play the game if you're a cynic, which is you try like crazy to beat the guy you don't like. If you don't succeed in that, then you try to find, once they've won the election, then you try to find ways to tear them down or their advisors down to the point that, maybe the goal here is to try to make Steve toxic so that maybe, President-elect Trump will rely on him less or be less interested in listening to his advice. I don't know, but it strikes me as character assassination always strikes me as pretty dirty business because ultimately it's about stealing from someone their reputation. And I don't know about you, but I'd much rather have someone steal my wallet than my reputation.
That's right.
It's one of the worst forms of theft that there is. And my experience tells me that only lowlifes engage in it. People of character will not do it.
Well, it's typical. It's right out of the James Carville, Bill Clinton playbook. And it's telling to me that it's the left and the neocon globalists in the Republican Party, people at magazines like the Weekly Standard and National Review, which have been totally eclipsed in terms of readership and public attention by Breitbart. Breitbart ate these magazines for lunch and, took a dump by the side of the road and left them there. And they resent it. They resent the influence that they lost to sites like Breitbart. They resent losing the election. They're angry that they couldn't just appoint Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio as the Republican nominee the way they appointed Bob Dole back in 1996. They're throwing a tantrum because they don't have the power to go and fool the Republican primary voter anymore, and they're losing influence. They're losing money. That's all this is about, influence and money, and they're cynically using a very serious business of racism and anti-Semitism in a cheap political takedown attempt.
John, we're up against the clock. Will you stick with us in the break?
Sure.
For the next segment? Excellent.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break now, but obviously this is a conversation worth continuing, so don't go away. And to our listeners, we're coming to you live from the Conservative Commandos Radio Network Studios, WNJC, 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia. And of course, probably most of you around the world are actually listening on the internet, since airwaves can only go so far, but the internet can go around the planet. And so you're probably listening on something like American Patriots Broadcasting, TalkStream Live, SHR Media, perhaps K98 Talk or iHeartRadio, or even AM FM 24/7. We're glad to have you. Don't go away. Rick and I will be right back with more from John and his great article on Steve Bannon.
That's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but I...
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, CCRSnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
This is Pastor Christina Lamanier, chaplain for the INRA.
And I'm her husband, J.D. Manier. We help co-host on the Conservative Commandos radio show, and we want to sincerely thank our listeners who turned out to vote en masse to elect Donald Trump, Governor Mike Pence, and conservative congressional candidates across our nation.
Against incredible odds, you helped create the strongest GOP team to take the reins of power in Washington since the 1920s. General George Patton said, "It's the unconquerable soul of man, not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory." We salute all of you for taking a stand for truth, freedom, and defending our constitutional form of government. Let us continue to pray for our nation and for God's blessings. May God save the United States of America.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando radio show.
Greetings, listeners. This is George Landreth, one of the deplorables. I'm with Rick Trader, another deplorable, and I trust that as our listeners, you too are proud deplorables. We're glad to have you with us, and if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show, please check our website, ccrsnetwork.com, ccrshow.com. You can also check us out at roarradio.net. At 11 p.m., you can always find us on highplainsdailynews.com, and with this phone number and your phone, you can always listen to the Conservative Commandos, 832-999-1199. So you can listen to us just about anywhere. The only thing we don't have is a smoke signal transmission. But other than that, you can always find us. We have with us John Zmirak. He is the senior editor at The Stream. He's also the author of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Catholicism. He's been the press secretary to the governor of Louisiana, Mike Foster. He's been a reporter and an editor at Success Magazine, the Investors Business Daily. And if you've heard of the newspaper, he has probably been published in it. So we are glad to have him with us, and we're grateful that you, John, would stick with us to the break to have this conversation. I know my fellow deplorable, Rick, has a couple of questions that he wants to ask, and then we'll of course continue this conversation.
Hey, John, I think it's important for our listeners to know where this rumor of Steve Bannon being anti-Jew, anti-Semitic comes from. And apparently, from what I understand, like a decade or two ago, he was going through a rather nasty divorce, and these comments were actually coming from his combative wife at the time.
You know, that's a small part of it, but really, I think, and most people know, you know, to take that with a pile of salt, because
that's what I'm saying.
People say a lot of things in divorce.
Absolutely.
You know how many false charges of child molestation are floating around out there? No, but I think the substantive thing is that the so-called alt-right, alternative right, has adopted Breitbart as their favorite news site. They read it, they forward it, they send it around, and they clog up the comments box. And a lot of these people, frankly, are jerks. And some of them are racist. Some of them are anti-Semites. So they like Breitbart in the same way that black Marxists probably like Slate Magazine and the Huffington Post. Mm-hmm. I don't hold Slate Magazine or Huffington Post responsible for the fact that Black Lives Matter style thugs or Islamists who want to colonize America find them politically useful because there's some apparent overlap and common ground. If you were to follow that, you would have to say, well, neo-Nazis are against massive immigration. Ronald Reagan was against massive immigration. Therefore, Ronald Reagan is a neo-Nazi. That's not how logic works.
You know, John, I think there's another element here that
actually,
people...
Actually, that's how logic works if you're a progressive.
Right.
You're right. That's not how logic works for regular folks.
John and George, I think there's another element here of why the left hate him so much. You know, beyond that, he's working for Trump now. But his association with Citizens United. And Citizens United has been a target of the left ever since the Supreme Court decision.
Right. I agree. But, you know, I'm not so much surprised or upset that the left is attacking Steve Bannon. What bothers me is National Review, Commentary Magazine, the Weekly Standard, all these people with some Republican credibility coming in and inventing pretty much out of thin air the charge that Steve Bannon and Breitbart are associated with hate movements.
But John, the groups that or the publications you just mentioned, those publications have been anti-Trump from the beginning.
That's right. So why should? And they were saying the same things about Trump before he was president-elect. But now that he's president-elect, okay, well, we'll just start shooting all his staff. We'll just start destroying anyone under him who was loyal to him and actually embodies the ideas that won him the election, so that he has nobody left to implement and run his administration except the same bunch of Republican and name-only hacks who have been such a spectacular failure at resisting Obama for the past 8 years. Right. So if you're going to allow Paul Ryan and people like that to surround Trump and fill all the cabinet positions and all the positions in the White House, well, then really we just have Jeb Bush with a different accent.
George, with that, I'll throw it back to you.
Fair enough. So what is the end game here? I mean, my sense of the left is they're very committed, and they don't go away easily. They don't give up easily. So they lost the election, and so now they're trying, to influence the Trump presidency, and this is how they're doing it. But my view is this is going to continue on. When Trump starts naming people that he wants to put in his cabinet, whoever he puts to be the head of the EPA, we're going to be told is the person who wants to rape the environment, doesn't care about our children's future. Whoever he wants to put in the court is going to be a person who wants to send black people and minorities and women back to the Stone Ages. And I mean, if that will be the mantra. That's always the mantra on the left. It will be a never-ending litany. So I guess my question is, how do you recommend to our listeners that they be prepared for all of the litany of horribles they're going to be hearing about for the next 4 years, and then probably again after 4 years after that for 8 years, they're going to be being told every single person that Donald Trump wants to hire, receive advice from, speak to, is somehow a deplorable.
Except if that person is from the John Kasich, Jeb Bush wing of the party, in which case they'll be, someone reasonable, someone moderate, someone who can govern, someone who is respectable, who's respected within the party. In other words, someone from the same dead establishment that delivered us defeats in 96, in 2000, and in 2004, 2008, and that gave us the disastrous Iraq War, that gave us a Supreme Court where the Republican nominees can't always be trusted, but the Democrats are always reliably liberal. The same bankrupt, watered-down Republican establishment that basically wants to do what the Democrats want to do, just a little bit slower. So if we're a car headed off a cliff at 90 miles an hour, you can trust the Republican establishment to keep a car headed off the cliff, but to slow down to 45.
Yeah, and I often joke that the one of the policy problems we have is that we are like a train headed towards a ravine where the bridge has been washed out.
Yeah.
And too often what we're arguing about is how fast the train should be going. And,
right.
You know, to be perfectly blunt, if the bridge is washed out, I suspect I want the train to go as fast as possible, because if the ravine's not that far across, we might jump the track. But it's an insane conversation, like you said. Whether we're going 70 or 45, we're headed towards a canyon, and we really have to be a little smarter than this.
Hey, John, please tell our audience where they could follow your work.
At stream.org, and also I have a new book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Catholicism, where you can learn everything that you need to know about why Pope Francis and the U.S. bishops aren't necessarily telling you the truth about Catholic teaching on immigration, economics, the environment, gun control, all those hot-button issues.
Well, John, hold on. Actually, I'll contact you, and we'll get a copy of that book. We'll have you back on and talk about it, all right?
All right. Thank you very much. You all have a good night.
John, thanks for joining us. George, we got to run. We're up. We got to go. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we're trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air.
Welcome to Greenberg News with your host, Brian Greenberg on WNJC 1360 AM. Wrapping up 21 years in broadcasting. And every now and then we get someone who is clearly on the ball. We have back again, Vox Day. We got to pin down exactly when he called the Trump slide. And I think there was a couple people maybe earlier than him, but very few. And Vox Day blog, Vox Day get his books, I'm waiting for the movie to come out. Vox, welcome back.
Thanks, Brian. Nice to be back again.
It's truly a remarkable ride. And yet, by the way, you don't document when you, or have you documented on your blog when you first called Trump slide?
Well, the first time I had a post that was actually called Trump